I'm standing in a forest that has grown up around this city, but I just thought I'd show you how unique it is to be in an abandoned city.
Today I take you inside the off-limits radiation exclusion zone of Chernobyl, to the abandoned city of Prypat, to the famous Chernobyl power plant, and then to the forgotten city of Chernobyl, where this eerie Soviet secret project was hidden. Join me on one of the most historically epic days of my life.
Should we not be here?
One of the most fascinating stories that almost reshaped our entire planet comes from Ukraine. And today we're seeing so many devastating stories come out of Ukraine, and for the Ukrainian people, our hearts are so heavy. But at the same time, we see so many acts of heroism and inspiration happening right now as they are fighting for their freedom. And, up until today, Ukraine was a country that many Westerners, especially Americans, knew little about. And the story of Chernobyl, Ukraine is it's devastatingly sad, yet when you think of how humanity came together, it's so beautiful. And from a science geek's perspective, it's absolutely fascinating. It's a story that it's just beautiful, and I do want to share it with you because their countryside is so beautiful. I was so fortunate enough to go to Ukraine, go to Chernobyl, be there, and it's a story of devastation and heroism at the same time, which is so much of what I feel is happening right now in their country. So enjoy it, guys.
Okay, my brother and I are on our way to Chernobyl. We're at the checkpoint.
My brother was living in Kiev at the time, and it's easy. All the tour buses leave from Kiev and drive you on up to Chernobyl, just 2 hours away.
Chernobyl tour, and this is the checkpoint to get in, which we can't photograph or film the guards or whatever, so they do actually keep track of the civilians and what country you're coming from that is entering the radiation zone.
For those that don't know, on April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded, pummeling record amounts of radioactive waste into the air. And in 2011, Chernobyl was finally made safe enough for the public to take day tours into the 1 and 10-kilometer exclusion zone that's been shut down ever since. Chernobyl's explosion created an epic, eerie ghost town, and to me, one of the Earth's most fascinating science and history stories. And 31 years later, I'm visiting it.
So I'm here at the Chernobyl welcome sign of the city. It's written in their Ukrainian language in the Cyrillic alphabet. Here is one of the few inhabitants. Only 150 people live in the 30-kilometer zone, and lots of dogs.
There's tons of wildlife in Chernobyl. You could Google that later. This little guy was super friendly. Now, to speed things up, I'm gonna put the 30-kilometer zone content at the end. Right now, we just entered the 10-kilometer zone, the hot spot. You're also gonna see these secretive, eerie Duga radar systems later at the end of the video. First, let's do Chernobyl.
Everyone behind me is testing the radiation levels. You put it closer to the ground because a lot of the radiation sits in the soil. Okay, I'm outside of Prypat, which is the town of 46,000 people that was probably closest to the nuclear power plant when it went off. Behind me is the highest radiation zone, period, ever since 1986. They actually don't allow tourists to go there. See, so there is some safety measure of what I'm doing, I promise. We're heading into Prypat. 46,000 people successfully evacuated Prypat around 20 hours after the explosion. Hoping you can see this city that has just been overgrown with woods over the years. Walking through Prypat, behind us, through those trees, was the hospital. So it's been 31 years since the reactors exploded, and now it's nothing but a forest that has grown up literally around a city. Here's a skyscraper behind me through these trees. Can you see it? I mean, it's a completely abandoned town. The trees in the street just say it all. And the trees right in the building, growing up in the middle of it.
It is the world has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth?
I'm standing in a forest that has grown up around this city. It was evacuated. A lot of people didn't want to leave because it was obviously a silent killer, the radiation, and they didn't really understand. But I just thought I'd show you how unique it is to be in an abandoned city. Truly like something out of a movie, but you could never film a movie here because of the levels and doses of radiation. Okay, here is an abandoned amusement park. It was set to open on May 1st, just 4 days after the explosion. So it never was opened. And they had everything here ready. It was a Ferris wheel, there's a little roller coaster, and over here was the bumper cars. So it truly is just like this abandoned, left behind dream. Instead, they ended up using this amusement park for a lot of the military vehicles and the holding of sandbags and lead, which they continuously used to fight the radiation over the next few months. And I'm actually at what would have been a hoppin' busy river port that's down off like a drive-in movie theater, like gas station. Prypat was a hoppin' city, about 47,000 people, 1,000 people each year were being born here. The average age was just 25. They wanted to turn the city, again under communism rule, into exactly 88,000 people. So it was a very fast-growing city. It was absolutely gorgeous. That's one of the reasons that no one wanted to evacuate Prypat when they had to. And sadly, I mean, beyond gorgeous, no one lives here today. It's hard to believe, like, wow, who wouldn't want to live here? But then you're wearing these radiation monitors that are constantly barking at you. So another interesting thing, why are we here? Another thing is, after the explosion, and 2-3 weeks after, they sent in thousands of people from all over the world, and they went in today with like what we have as hazmat suits, and they sprayed down all the buildings all around here, trying to, I guess, subside the radiation. And so some of the buildings, this is kind of what some of the buildings look like today. And of course they have like a before picture of what this place looked like, and it was just gorgeous. So it's really hard to picture now being completely abandoned. So what we're doing right now is we just got out of the van near the asphalt, very close to the power plant. We checked the radiation on our meter, it's 0.22. And if you put it towards this tree, towards the ground.
Should we not be here?
So we're actually supposed to go very quickly into the kindergarten, get a look, and get back in the bus because it's not really safe around here for too long. Is your radiation meter going off?
It actually got better in the building.
So hopefully you can see me. These were the kids' locker rooms. And in here, okay, if you can see behind me, here's the kindergarten's bunk beds for nap time. There is something that you'd see only on a film set, yet you wouldn't be allowed to film here because we're only allowed to be here for only so much time to keep the radiation levels small. Okay, so you hear Russell's radiation meter going off. You're looking at the shield that's over reactor number 4. 1 and 2 and 3 is there.
After the explosion, every minute counted because deadly invisible radioactive material was being blown into the air. Around 500,000 people worked to clean up and build a steel shield that they would put over it, called the sarcophagus. And it was done in just 200 days, and it was intended to be a temporary solution. Most everyone that was exposed at that time helping would die shortly after. After 30 years, the shield was cracking and rusting, leaking radiation. So a new permanent arch was built off-site and rolled over the reactor in November 2016, so just 10 months before I visited.
So this extra shield has really taken the doses of radiation down. We are instructed not to walk on any of the ground over there, and if you get there close with your meter, it immediately goes off very loudly. So we're staying here on the asphalt. of the famous Chernobyl power plant. For most of you young folks like myself that wonder, well, who cares about Chernobyl? What you didn't know is had the heated lava from the explosion went further into the chamber, that's sand, and they're using the sand to it deters radiation. That's why there's sand here. But okay.
What I'm trying to say is that the radioactive lava was so hot it was going to melt through the very cement and eventually hit the groundwater underneath the nuclear power plant, which would have created a phreatic explosion. It took hundreds of heroic miners and a few divers that had to dive under into radioactive water to put in more steel and cement to keep that radioactive liquid from getting to the groundwater, preventing the world's largest phreatic explosion.
It's alive. A lot of the main people that died was immediately after they sent helicopter pilots over to dump sand down into the reactor, and immediately, like, those pilots within like a few hours after, they started vomiting, diarrhea, etc. Were taken to Moscow's hospital, where later they died, probably within a few days. The sand wasn't enough, so then they wanted to dump in lead from the helicopters, so more pilots volunteered themselves to their deaths by flying those helicopters over that high radiation cloud. Meanwhile, it's just pummeling. For those of you who don't know, the nuclear reactor just kept pummeling all that heated lava and explosion that was sitting there, pushing the gas. Pretty cool military trucks, huh? It was pushing that gas from the nuclear power plant into the air and just blowing it all over Russia and Europe for days and days and days on end. Nuclear nastiness just floating around, and most of us were pretty unaware of actually just how bad it was until once they started working on it. We watched a documentary about it on the way here in my tour van.
I gotta say, I went to Chernobyl long before HBO TV series made it super cool, and they do an excellent job telling this story. I highly recommend that you watch it. The funny thing is I had the idea to make a TV show long before HBO did, and I hope to do so on my science TV series that I hope to get picked up one day, called Blown Away, for two reasons. A, I want to expose all the mismanagement of the crisis itself. That's the mind-blowing part, blown away. And the second thing is recreate what didn't happen, and that's that phreatic explosion that would have changed our world forever. The heroes avoided that by just days. Now you're looking at a river bridge on our way to Reactor 4, where there's some super large catfish that are rumored to be mutated. Google mutated animals of Chernobyl. You'll love what you see.
Russell's thing's going on. Reactors behind him. So I'm only able to vlog in one direction. Behind me, 150 meters, is reactor number 4 and the shield that they put on it. And you can still hear everybody's radiation meters going off.
The radiation meters that we're holding is really there for our entertainment. They measure Röntgens, which is a measurement of radioactive material. But scientists know how much we can be exposed to, and tours are safe. 5,000 people go into the 10-kilometer zone every single day to report in for work. Mind-blowing to think that something happened decades ago will forever in the future, even 100 years from now, still need to be managed and worked at just to keep it contained and safe. So we know exactly how much the human body can and can't be exposed to. A lot of the employees have to spend very quick times in certain areas and get out fast. Some employees can stay the night, and then they have to get out for certain periods of time.
Okay, one positive thing that came from Chernobyl's explosion of the nuclear power plant is in 1986 they still had communism rule, but since this was a world problem, I mean, shit was fixing literally to blow up. Europe was going to be changed forever. It already had exploded and was on its way of killing thousands over the years. Is that it helped bring the world powers together. Every single country gave every single asset that they could if they had it, and they would square up later. It was a small win for Gorbachev in the right direction, they say. Okay, so behind me are little street signs, and every single sign represents a village that after the Chernobyl explosion, the village had to be evacuated and no longer remains. And if you look at the signs behind me, they're black on the other side with an X marked through them, meaning that the villages no longer exist. Behind me is a symbolic statue for the women of Prypat. because after they evacuated Prypat, they had abortions, so they wouldn't have any risk of deformity, or they didn't know what would happen if they did have a baby. One thing our tour guide warned us about is to not eat mushrooms here. And in case you don't know, mushrooms, they clean the soil, they clean the environment. They're the teeth of the forest, as my brother said. And there are a lot of mushrooms here in Chernobyl. They just grow in this area a lot. Directly behind me is the administration of the explosion zone. So they still actually, till this day, are working there. Here in Chernobyl, one of the last remaining statues of Lenin is still here. They haven't tore it down. That no social justice warriors are willing to come into Chernobyl to tear it down. Here at one of the 2 remaining churches in Chernobyl. Imagine this little gem just has sat vacated since 1986.
Here is a hero's monument, and you look up above reactor 4 is a symbol of the world, because this quickly became the world's problem. And back then we weren't besties with Russia or the Soviet Union, but the world had to pull together to fix this problem.
You know how Russians and these people on this side of the world love their vodka. Behind us is one of the fallen workers who's sick. And in documentaries about Chernobyl, they talk a lot about how they drank a lot of vodka while they were working the relief efforts, mining the tunnel into the power plant. And the men that lived after working here in Chernobyl, the ones that lived were the men that actually did drink vodka. For some reason, it helped with the radiation level. Okay, so my brother just further explained that vodka has iodine in it, and their thyroids were soaking up the iodine instead of the radioactive iodine, which helped save their lives. So after the explosion of Chernobyl, the world's eyes were looking upon Chernobyl, and we were able to find out over the years many things about this area. And back then, this is still during the Soviet time, so we were in the last 5 years of communism, 1986, and they came across this children's camp, and we just drove down a long paved road through the woods. So you know this isn't a children's camp. What they found was these super high structures that are standing behind me, and they speculate that they were trying to build something for mind control. That's my brother. Mind control, am I getting it right?
It's the Soviet version of HARP, which is in the States.
HARP's in Alaska. So here we are visiting this top secret place. So no one actually lives here, but look, there's the military dude that's here, allowing us to go in now. Behind me, high barbed wire fences with lookout stands, very common for every children's camp. So after walking through woods back there, you come up on the gates that get you to this large, tall, tower-like receiver that the government did not let the receivers be seen on tours like I'm doing today until 2013. The reactor exploded in '86, so it took that long for us to get access to whatever this thing is that they were building. Barrels actually used to hold white paint that they painted these towers with, because they painted every 6 months, because if there was not paint on these towers, they didn't detect what they were meant to detect, and I'll tell you what that is. Here's all its glory, able to detect intercontinental missiles. Okay, so now that I'm here, you could really see just how big this sucker is. They built this to detect intercontinental missiles and mind control. And again, like the beach sand, you wouldn't suspect to be here, but they put the beach sand here to defer the radiation.
The towers are known as Duga radars in Chernobyl, Ukraine, formerly the USSR. They transmitted a radio signal that sounded like a woodpecker, and the sound was picked up by TV and radios around the world. It was very disruptive, and people set out to figure out just where in the world is this noise coming from. It was traced back to here and called the Russian woodpecker. At the time, you couldn't just tell them to shut that pesky thing up. Despite rumors it wasn't used for mind control, but to detect rockets or missiles being launched overseas. But by the 1990s, we had already begun using satellites instead, so this is truly a dated gem of technology.
Touring hard. I'm touring hard. Okay, so this is an outhouse here in Chernobyl Ukraine, and that's a squatty potty. I just owned that. All right, go through Russell. Okay, so here's where you go through this machine, and they actually detect and make sure that you're not bringing any radiation out with you, like a mushroom or moss, or just were exposed to it in general.
You know, I can only hope that in the future Chernobyl will reopen up to a free world, and many of you can also go there and experience it, because seeing it isn't the same as the magic that you really feel getting to be there. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I know it's completely different from what I usually do, but I couldn't help but share my time there with you. I have another video when I visit Kiev, Ukraine, and I will have that video out coming soon. Prayers and blessings and just complete love and admiration for all the freedom fighters there in Ukraine. May we find peaceful resolution, and most importantly, may we find resolution that has nothing to do with NATO's agenda, nothing to do with Putin's agenda, nothing to do with the Americans' agenda, which, yes, we usually muck about in everybody's wars, and apologies from the West for that. May we find peaceful resolution only and just for the Ukrainian people. May we have your interest at heart. Make sure and visit my website where I sell tons of cool retro tees. And I know, shame on me, I'm not even wearing one right now. That's my fault, but we are all humans and we make mistakes. So go and check them out. Please share me with anyone you think I might bring inspiration to. Most of my videos are usually based around self-help and spirituality. I love you so much. I subscribe to about 100 people on YouTube. I love all of them and I want to see all of their videos. Guess what? I don't see any of them. I see like 3 of them. You know why? Because the YouTube algorithm will only show you videos of similar ones you recently last watched. So make sure and periodically, sporadically, drop by my channel, come by, massage all kinds of buttons and click around, get in the algorithm, get me in your algorithm. Have a wonderful day. Love you.